Welcome to my Chanel. My name is Fonda Avery. I'm 29 years old. And 12 years ago, my parents packed my entire life into one plastic tote and set it on the front porch, because I got a job. I was 17. What my parents told the rest of my family about that night was worse than what actually happened. And what they did the following spring, when their brand new babysitter quit without notice, that's the part people never believe. But here's what none of them knew about me. I keep receipts. Not the paper kind. The kind you set down real quiet on your grandmother's Thanksgiving tablecloth. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally get to tell the truth about the families that underestimated them. If you've ever been the one who held everything together while everybody called it nothing, this story is yours too. Subscribe and let's get into it. Part 1, The Tuesdays. You can't understand the tote until you understand the Tuesdays. My alarm went off at 5:50 every morning. 3 lunch boxes packed by 6:15. Turkey for Cody, who was 9. No strawberries for Bess, who was 7 and allergic. An inhaler zipped into Sam's backpack, because Sam was 4 and thought inhalers were toys. I braided Bess's hair while my mother's coffee went cold. My mom, Denise, worked shift supervisor hours at a warehouse. My dad, Ray, drove regional routes and came home Fridays smelling like diesel. So the pickup line was me. Homework was me. Fever nights, permission slips, the tooth fairy, all me. I was 17 and running a household of 6. Nobody in that house ever said the word for what I actually was. They just called it helping. Then one September afternoon, in a pediatrician's waiting room, I saw a flyer. Weekend aid position at a senior center. $8.50 an hour. And under my mattress, I already had a folder, printouts for a scholarship called Beacon Health Scholars. Full ride. Tuition, housing, everything, for students going into nursing. But Beacon had one brutal requirement, 200 verifiable care hours. Verifiable. I had 9 years of hours. I could dose children's medicine by weight without looking at the box. None of it counted, because family doesn't sign timesheets. The flyer was a licensed care setting. Weekend shifts wouldn't touch a single school day pickup. It fit perfectly. It scared me how perfectly it fit. There was just one lock on that door, and it wasn't emotional, it was legal. I needed a parent's signature on a work permit. My mother would say no before I finished the sentence. So I went to my father, on a Friday night, with the flyer, the shift schedule, and 6 freezer meals already stacked and labeled like bricks. I'd built the whole thing like a bridge before I ever asked permission. He read it twice. Signed it fast, like the paper was hot. "Don't tell your mother I signed that," he said. Asterisk, let me pick the moment. Asterisk. He never picked the moment. The moment got picked for all of us 2 weeks later, when a pay stub slipped out of my jacket in the laundry room. Part 2, The Cold House. My mother didn't yell. Yelling would have meant something surprised her, and Denise Avery did not permit surprises. She called a family meeting, which in our house meant a performance review. She laid the pay stub flat on the table like evidence. "This family is a team," she said. Asterisk, teams don't clock out. Asterisk, she called my paycheck selfish money. I showed her my index cards, my shift map, the 6 labeled dinners. I told her nothing on the school week schedule would change. She said the one honest thing anyone said that whole autumn, asterisk, this isn't about the schedule, Fonda. Asterisk, she was right. It was about whose life my life belonged to. The house went cold after that. My mother stopped speaking to me directly, instructions came through my 9-year-old brother instead. And the schedule started slipping. Twice in 2 weeks, she came home late on my shift mornings, no call, no text, and I stood in the driveway doing math with a 4-year-old on my hip. Twice I clocked in late. My supervisor warned me, one more, and the paperwork starts. Then my mother got offered a promotion, more money, permanent nights, and she announced my half of the deal at dinner. Home every evening. Crestwood over. Give notice by Sunday. I told her, in front of my father and the mashed potatoes, the thing I'd never said out loud, I'm applying for a nursing scholarship. Full ride. If I quit, I lose it. And I'm not quitting. Asterisk. She laughed. One short syllable, no joy in it. Asterisk nursing school. On whose gas money? Asterisk then, asterisk quit by Sunday, or find somewhere else to sleep. Asterisk. My father called from a truck stop the next morning. Asterisk just do what your mother says. For now. Asterisk for now, a little hinge of a phrase, doing the work that man never would. Part 3, The Porch. I worked my full shift that Sunday anyway. Biked home after dark through an October drizzle. And there it was, the porch light on, wrong. A shape on the welcome mat, wrong. My clothes, my books, my scholarship folder, rubber banded. My coat folded on top like a hotel checkout. My key went in half an inch and stopped. I saw my little brother Cody at the front window, both palms on the glass, crying so hard his shoulders shook, and a hand pulled him back, and the curtain swung shut. That's the picture I still see at 2 a.m. sometimes. Not the tote. My brother being removed from the window like a decoration. I stood on that porch 40 minutes in the rain. Then I did something that mattered more than anything else I did that year. I photographed the tote, timestamp and all, because some cold, clear voice in my head said, someday somebody is going to ask. I texted my dad. He answered fast, asterisk you did this to yourself. Don't come back until you remember what family means. Asterisk. I strapped the tote to my bike and rode 15 minutes to the only address I had left, my Aunt Carol's upholstery shop. She opened the door with a staple gun in her hand, looked at me, looked at the tote, and asked nothing. Asterisk get inside. You're staying. Asterisk. That first night, my hand kept patting the couch cushion beside me, reaching for an inhaler that wasn't there. Instead of sleeping, I made a list titled asterisk things nobody will do now. Asterisk at midnight I tried to put my wet shoes back on and go back to them. Carol blocked the stairs with one arm and picked up the phone. I heard her say, low and then not low at all, asterisk she is 17, Denise. Asterisk. Monday, the school counselor called me in. She was a mandated reporter. The words came out that I'd never applied to myself, asterisk unaccompanied youth. Abandonment asterisk I sat there, homeless by federal definition, defending the people who'd changed the locks. That same week, my Aunt Carol said one sentence that ended up carved over the door of my whole adult life, asterisk you are allowed to cost something. Asterisk. Part 4, The Story They Told. At the school meeting, my mother gave the performance of her life. Warm, weary, a hard-working mom whose oldest daughter had hit a rebellious patch. Some boy nobody approved of. A job taken behind their backs. She said the tote was me being dramatic, that I'd packed it myself. I sat 3 feet away while my own story got recut in front of me. And she wasn't lying the way nervous people lie. She was believing it as she went. But the counselor explained what a neglect report looks like once it's filed, how it follows a family. My parents, who wouldn't give me a bed, couldn't sign the guardianship papers fast enough to give me away. My dad's hand shook signing it. The paper meant to protect them from an investigation was the paper that set me free. On the way out, my mother passed close to me. Asterisk, you'll be back by Christmas. Asterisk. I moved in with Carol properly. I taped my first full pay stub to the bathroom mirror, not for the amount, but because it had my name on work the world admitted was work. That's a thing your family can take from you without ever raising a voice, the receipt. A resident named Mrs. Aldrich taught me cribbage and told me, while beating me 3 games straight, asterisk at my age, you learn to count only the love that doesn't send a bill. Asterisk. That night my 13-year-old cousin texted me, asterisk is it true? Mom said you stole money and ran off with some guy. Asterisk 19 relatives in the family group chat, and not one called to ask my version. I drafted 11 replies and deleted every one. You cannot outshout a story like that. You can only outlive it. Part 5, The Folder. Instead of fighting the rumor, I built something. A plain manila folder, after-school subsidy programs, income tables, my father's shift swap policy at work, sitter contacts. I was building my family an exit ramp. I just didn't know yet who'd have to drive them onto it. Then the Beacon scholarship packet arrived, full tuition, housing, a stipend, with one brutal deadline, report to residency June 1st. No deferrals. Carol circled it in red marker on the kitchen calendar, hard enough to dent 3 months of pages. Now it's real, she said. My grandmother summoned me to lunch and told me, gently, that my mother had given up everything for this family and I couldn't give 2 years. Then she told me a story I'd never heard, that my mother, at 16, had raised her younger siblings after my grandfather died. Braided hair at 6 a.m. biked to a job before school. Never complained. The oldest carries, my grandmother said. Asterisk, that's how it's always been. Asterisk word for word, my mother's exact sentence. I'd come hoping for an ally. I left understanding I was up against something older than my mother, because my mother had once been me, standing right where I stood, before it swallowed her. Part 6, Thanksgiving. My mother came to my job and tried to get me fired by claiming I was a runaway working without permission. She didn't know my father's signature was already on file. She read it and looked, for 1 second, not furious, confused. Like a machine fed a coordinate that didn't exist. That night, they'd hired a new babysitter, who texted me for help with my brother's inhaler steps. I answered every message. My war was with my parents. My siblings weren't enlisted in it. Thanksgiving came. I packed one manila envelope, a photo of the tote, a printout of my father's text, and a copy of the unaccompanied youth letter. No speech. Just paper. At the table, my mother told the room, warmly, that I'd chosen a paycheck and some boy over my siblings, that they were praying I'd come back. Heads nodded around the table. Then my 13-year-old cousin, seated at the kids' table, asked the question no adult would, asterisk, then why does she live with Aunt Carol? Asterisk. The table went silent. I took out the envelope and set it on my grandmother's white tablecloth. I laid out the photo. The text. The letter. No editorializing. Just the truth, in writing, letting it eat. My mother stood so fast her chair barked on the floor. Asterisk, the oldest carries. That's how it's, asterisk. I know, I said, still sitting. Asterisk, I carried. Asterisk. I thanked my grandmother for dinner, told the kids I loved them, and walked out. My father followed me onto the porch. I should have picked the moment, he said, voice breaking. Asterisk, I'm sorry. Asterisk, I asked him to prove it, to come inside and say that sentence at the table. He looked at the glowing window and said, asterisk, I can't. Your mother. Asterisk, and the sentence ended, like all his sentences about her, in a place with no floor. Part 7, The Collapse. Winter came down cold and total, 3 weeks of silence. Then my father started sneaking the kids to Carol's shop one Saturday a month. Pancakes, burnt on one side every single time. For 2 hours a month, I wasn't a roomer. I was just their sister at a table. In January, Mrs. Aldrich died in her sleep. She'd left me her cribbage board with a note, asterisk, for the pancake girl. She counts fine. Asterisk, I cried for the first time since the porch. In February, I made the Beacon finalist round. A panel asked me to describe a time caring cost me something. I told them everything, the lunchboxes, the ultimatum, the tote under the porch light. I told them those years were the best clinical rotation I'd ever get. They just never came with a supervisor's signature. 3 weeks later, a conditional full ride offer. Report June 1st. No deferrals. Carol circled it again, hard enough to tear the page. Then in April, at 11 at night, my phone lit up twice. The babysitter had quit, overloaded, unpaid enough, done. And the Avery family system, run for a decade on my free labor, seized up in a single evening. My phone flooded with messages, every one of them about coverage, shifts, logistics. Not one asked how I was. Friday, my mother was waiting for me in a parking lot with a coffee made exactly how I take it. Come home, she said. Asterisk will pay you. Whatever we paid the sitter. Fair and square. Asterisk. Market rate. After 17 years unpaid. She just confessed to the whole thing without hearing herself do it. Then the real ask, defer the scholarship a year. Asterisk family first. Nursing school isn't going anywhere. Asterisk Beacon's letter said no deferrals. Whether she knew that, I've never asked. I told her I'd answer tomorrow. Part 8, the answer. That night my sister called crying. My little brother kept asking when I was coming back to do his bedtime steps in order, because no substitute ever did them right. I sat with that a long time. Then I made myself do the math. If I went back, my parents would get permanent proof that the door only swings one way, that you can put a daughter on a porch in the rain, and she'll come back if you price her right. And someday the tote would be my little sister's. If I stayed gone, the kids got a harder Tuesday, and a sister who proved it was survivable. In the morning, I rode back to the house with the folder bungeed to my bike basket. My chair at the kitchen table had a stack of unopened mail piled on it. They hadn't replaced me. They'd just let the mail pile up where I used to sit. My mother had the new schedule half planned before I sat down. I let her finish. Then I slid the folder across the table. Inside, 2 after-school program spots, already secured, pending her signature. Subsidy paperwork they'd qualified for 2 years, and never checked. My father's shift swap eligibility, highlighted, he'd qualified since March. Vetted sitters. And laminated care instructions, in my handwriting, for every one of my siblings. You don't need a daughter back, I said. Asterisk you need a system. There it is. It cost me one winter. It doesn't cost anybody their life. Asterisk. My mother reached for the heirloom one last time. The oldest carries, Fonda, that's how it's. Asterisk then it ends with me. Asterisk. I told them, one Saturday a month, pancakes at Carol's, all 3 kids. Not negotiable. Then I walked out. My little brother pressed his hand to the glass behind me. I raised mine level with his, 15 feet of morning air between us, and I did not look back, because if I had, I'd still be standing there. Part 9, after. I signed the scholarship papers that same afternoon. I went home to Carol's and unpacked the tote for the first time in 7 months. Folded it flat when I was done. It made a sound like something ending. A year later, full tuition paid, housing paid, nursing school underway. My father took the home route he'd qualified for months earlier, first time in 15 years he made it home for a Tuesday dinner. My mother stepped back to day shift, gave up the title she'd traded me for. And every page of that folder got used, the subsidy, the sitters, the after-school program, all of it, still running, without me. On my 19th birthday, a card came. My mother's handwriting, cramped and careful, asterisk the kids are fine. I didn't know how much you did. Asterisk. No apology in it. Just evidence. I clipped it to the mirror next to my first pay stub, and I left it there. They don't try to force me back anymore. They ask now. There's a difference. And the difference is the whole war. A few weeks before that birthday card, my grandmother called me herself and asked me to come Sunday, no speeches. I went, on my own terms. And in the doorway I found my cousin Danny, older now, a toddler on her hip and a tray balanced on her free arm. The duty had come for her too, right on schedule, like a birthday. Nobody had asked her either. I took the tray out of her hands. Set a plate in front of her, her own plate, first serving, still warm. You are allowed to cost something, I told her. She looked at me sideways. Asterisk, that's a weird thing to say. Asterisk, and went back to her eggs. That's fine. It was weird when Carol said it to me too. Seeds don't have to make sense on the day you plant them. 12 years and 1 nursing degree later, here's the one thing I know for certain. Asterisk, love that has to be paid for isn't love. It's rent. And the day I stopped paying rent on a room they never planned to let me keep was the day I finally got a home. That's my story. 1 plastic tote. 1 red circle on a kitchen calendar. 1 folder that did my old job better than my whole childhood ever did. If you were the oldest one who carried, hear me. You are allowed to cost something. If this story found you at the right time, share it with the one who needs it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.